Our gospel for today comes from Mark. We are in the 8th chapter. Then Jesus began to teach his disciples, "The human one must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and the legal experts, and be killed. And then after 3 days rise from the dead." Jesus said this plainly. But Peter took hold of Jesus and, scolding him, began to correct him. Jesus turned and looked at his disciples and sternly corrected Peter. "Get behind me, Satan. You are not thinking God's thoughts, but human thoughts." After calling the crowd together with his disciples, Jesus said to them, "All who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. All who want to save their lives will lose them, but all who lose their lives because of me and because of the good news will save them. Why would people gain the whole world, but lose their lives? What will people give in exchange for their lives? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this unfaithful and sinful generation, the human one will be ashamed of that person when he comes in the Father's glory with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord. Either you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. Either your tractor is green or it's red. Either you're a Cubs fan or you make poor choices. Either you're with us or you're against us. Life. We love to distill it down to a single decision, to a point of clarity and resolve, to resolution and absolutes. There can be no discussion, no debate, no more room for compromise. Either you know that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, or you've never seen the movie. Either you love your neighbor, or you only love yourself. Either you for law and order, or you are for criminal behavior. Name your topic. This is often how we find ourselves interacting with our neighbors, and it can seem like every aspect of our life can be brought into this clarity and focus, either or thinking. It is so profoundly embedded into our culture, into our families, in our churches, in our faith. It shapes how we encounter our classmates, our coworkers, strangers on the street, people on the screens who we will never meet, but we still have an idea about them, about politicians and political activists, either or thinking. We need the clarity. We want the assurance. It even shapes how we encounter Jesus, and we see that in our gospel for today from our brother Peter. Across the Gospels, all four of them, the disciples are often meant to be models for you and me because they're the ones who are following Jesus. Now, they follow Jesus very clumsily, very boldly, very foolishly, and very confidently, the same way you and I do it. But they keep following Jesus because Jesus keeps inviting us to follow him, to keep sticking around because for reasons that don't make sense and are not clear, he sticks with us. Maybe part of that is because our faith in Christ is not complete when we rise up out of those waters. Now, of course, we are solidified in our relationship with Christ, and Jesus isn't going anywhere, but we continue to grow. We continue to develop in our faith. We continue to understand how God is working with us. And besides, we haven't made it to that great and glorious day just yet. So until we get there, we are stuck here. So we just got to keep keeping on and following Jesus. And so with Peter as our proxy, Jesus, our beloved Jesus, who we've been following now for almost 9 chapters in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is now talking about torture and death, and he is saying it plainly. Mark wants us to acknowledge when he starts talking about the cross, he is saying it out loud. This comes as a comparison to when he heals people, he tells them to keep it to themselves. When he casts out demons, he silences them when they call him by name. When the disciples identify him, Jesus tells them, don't tell anybody else. But when he starts talking about the cross, put it on blast. Let the world know. Jesus will be arrested, tortured, he will be humiliated, nailed to the cross, and he will die. And he'll rise in 3 days. So Peter hears this. He's been following Jesus, just like you and I follow Jesus. Peter hears this, and immediately he jumps up into the rescue, and he tries to silence Jesus. Now you and I, we've read the last chapter of the book. We know where this goes. And you and I, we've had a couple of Easters under our belt, so we kind of understand the whole theme and the process. So knowing that Jesus represents us, we kind of duck our eyes a little bit. We're a little embarrassed because he's jumping out of his Birkenstocks to do a pretty ridiculous thing. Something that you and I, dare we say, we celebrate. Jesus' death and resurrection. And yet what Brother Peter is doing, he's actually cutting a little close to our gut, because he's revealing that he, like you and I in our relationship with God, our relationship with each other, he's got a vision. He's already mapped out the whole plan. He's got everything laid out in his head, and no one, not even Jesus, is going to mess up his plans. Which might be why sometimes we're hesitant to pray to God when we're about to do a bold thing. Right before this conversation about the cross, this whole thing where Jesus is making it public, even draws crowds in to tell them about the cross, right before this, 2 verses before this, Jesus gives a bit of a trivia contest. What do people say that I am? And then he throws it at the disciples. Who do you say that I am? And Peter is the only one who wins the contest. You are the Christ. So he's got it. Now we know Christ is not Jesus' last name. It's actually a job title. Christ also means Messiah. Christ also means anointed, as in King David, who was anointed by God, and a bunch of other lesser kings. We can't remember their names. We'll look them up later in a Bible study. Anointed, meaning blessed directly by the hand of God. Messiah, as in sent by God to restore life and bring salvation to God's people. Peter got it right. He's been following Jesus all this time. He's been bumbling and fumbling and being a disciple like you and me, and his vision has been narrowing, it's been sharpening. He's been getting it honed down to a singular outcome. Jesus is going to overthrow the Roman oppressors. Jesus, the Christ, is going to organize the people. Jesus, the anointed, is going to get the band back together, and they're going to march on Jerusalem with all the trumpets and all the lyres and all the loud clanging cymbals, and we're going to take back this nation. Jesus the Christ will be victorious. It's right there in the Revolutionary's Handbook. That was verse 29. Now we're in verse 31. And already Jesus is messing up everything. And that's why Peter, our beloved Peter, that's why he thinks he knows who Jesus is, and he jumps out of his feet and he silences Jesus. Now, he doesn't say anything. At least Mark doesn't convey what the conversation was. They had it a little off to the side. But Peter is putting Jesus in an either-or situation. It is either Peter's vision or it's something else. The words aren't there, but we can imagine what's going on as Peter says to Jesus, Jesus, either you're the Messiah or you're not. Either you're anointed by God to lead us to freedom, or you're just another big talker. Either you are the Son of God, or you're just another do-gooder on his way to an early grave. And Jesus, for me to believe in you, for me to keep following you, you have to be more than dead. For me to believe in you, you need to be more powerful than the armies that keep moving through our streets and arbitrarily taking life without regard. Jesus, for me to keep following you, you have to be worthy of God's name. You've got to be better. You've got to be stronger. You've got to be wiser. You need to be above all of us, different from us. Either you are or you aren't. Either you can save us, Jesus, or you can't. Consumed by fear. When we get encircled in our own frustration, when we are surrounded on all sides by imminent signs of collapse, we humans, we easily fall into narrowed visions. In fact, there is a scientific pattern for this. When we fall into fight or flight or frozen responses, our eyesight will literally shrink down to a single point. We can't see other options or outcomes. Defining the dimensions of every debate to either or statements, it is part of being human, as much as it is part of how we keep ourselves away from other humans. At least the humans that we're disagreeing with in the moment. It's self-preservation. We need to put ourselves, our hopes, our wants, our dreams, our ideas above the thoughts and dreams and ideas of other people. We've got to draw a line in the sand once in a while. Deep, reflective thoughts take time. They run the risk of changing our minds. And when our vision is clear, when our plans are set, when our hearts are locked in on that single beat or rhythm, there is no more room for mystery. Whether we're talking baseball or Black Lives Matter, whether we're talking academics or addiction, when we're talking about whether Indians wear bow ties or blue ovals, or we're talking about the root causes of unemployment, we tell ourselves every topic, every issue, every outcome has one reason, one response, one path, one method of being addressed. Even in the sacreder spaces of our relationship with God, Jesus can be boiled down to one Peter-style statement. Either you believe in God or you don't. And to every attempt by Peter to silence and simplify God's work, Jesus responds by casting out our demons and then standing in mystery. Because the cross stands in mystery. The cross stands in defeat. The cross stands in exhaustion and disappointment and betrayal. The cross stands in line at the food pantry. The cross stands in sin and suffering. The cross stands in hunger and homelessness and hopeless days. The cross stands in the rubble of torn down histories. The cross stands in endlessly waiting for our turn to get the vaccine. The cross stands in the gaze of racism, sexism, ageism, and capitalism. The cross stands on street corners, marking tragedy and loss. The cross of Christ stands in the midst of our lived experience, because it's here where Jesus the Christ has come to dwell. It's here with us that Jesus the Anointed is revealing his presence. It's here among us, our neighbors, our co-workers, our classmates, our community, where Jesus, Son of God, has brought God near. So Jesus rebukes our need to keep him high above, to keep him out of reach, to keep him away from the fog and the dust and the dismay. Jesus calls out our hope that we might somehow be different from him, that he might be better than us, that he might be able to avoid our lives. Jesus casts out our limited vision that he is separate from us, and he declares the good news openly, that our suffering is his suffering, our pain is his pain, our sadness and our sin belongs to him. He will stand in the mystery of life with us, and then he'll gather all of us up, all of it in his arms. All the absolutes, all the either-ors, all the labels, all the divisions, all the apparent distinctions, all the sickness, all the health, all the joy, all the sorrow, all the hunger, all the pain, all the tragedy, all the celebration. He gathers all of it, carries it to the cross, and he carries it with us. He carries it for us, to free us, to cut us loose, to break us away from narrow limits of vision in order to see all that God is doing through us, through our neighbors, through our classmates, through people who we have yet to meet, across the lines that we draw, and always on the opposite side of every debate that we hold. Jesus takes up our lives. He's right here in the midst with us, and he restores us to life through a cross designed for death. Jesus is a mystery, because we know how we are loved so fully and so completely, and that is a mystery, a holy, blessed mystery that's revealed through an anointed Son of God who keeps holding us close to God, who keeps inviting us to stay with him, who keeps coming to us as we fumble and bumble and mess up along the way. Jesus continues to love us. We are imperfect. We are more than one topic. We are more than one style. We are more than one tragic event. We are more than one successful moment. We are shaped and created every day by the hand and word of our Creator who walks by our side where we are, where our neighbors dwell, where humanity struggles to see hope, because we are surrounded by a gray, foggy haze of our lived days. Jesus stands here. so that we can find our place, standing in the lives of our neighbors. Amen.